May's a good month for celebrating, not least the arrival of spring here in Europe, with finally some warmth and sunshine to reassure those tender shoots and buds which have spent the past months poking their little heads out, uncertain of the reception that they're going to receive. But now they're relaxing and rewarding us all with wonderful sights, sounds, and fragrant smells. It's also a month of anniversaries, bringing its own crop of birthdays and jubilees to encourage celebration of achievements and landmark events. And in amongst those historical and personal events, we can find some innovation stories worth reflecting on and congratulating, including one which revolutionized the clothes we wear. Because May 2025 marks the 50th anniversary of the founding of Zara. Now it's worth a closer look, not least because its story represents system-level changes in the way we see things, business model innovations, which change the game. And this kind of paradigm shift is fairly rare, but when it happens, it triggers a wave of accompanying product, process, and market positioning change, which reshapes the way the world works. Now, Zara's story starts in Spain, but not in the main shopping thoroughfares of big metropolitan centers like Madrid or Barcelona. Instead, we're in the quieter country to the west, in the town of A Coruña in Galicia, where we first meet a young 13-year-old, Amancio Ortega Gaona, who's working as a delivery boy for a local shirt maker. Now, in terms of acquiring a thorough grounding in the ins and outs of the textile trade, there's nothing to beat working as a gopher, being thrown at any and all the tasks that need doing, even if it didn't feel so much fun at the time. So Amancio spent his days learning the intricacies of design, cutting, sewing, sales, hands-on experience, which provided him with an intimate understanding of what was then the typical fashion supply chain. A process that was often slow, disconnected from customer demand, and one which resulted in significant inventory piling up and markdowns to shift that inventory. He started to question this prevailing model, and he noticed that trends appeared on the runway and in high fashion magazines long before they were available to the average consumer. By the time the clothes arrived in stores, customer tastes had often moved on, leading to unsold stock and the need for heavy discounting. He envisioned a different approach, one that could rapidly respond to emerging trends and deliver fashionable, affordable clothing to the masses while those trends were still hot. Frustrated with his career prospects, he decided to strike out on his own. And in 1963, he and his wife, Rosalia, who'd also spent her life in the fashion industry, invested their savings into a small manufacturing operation making quilted robes and lingerie and pajamas. This venture, named Confecciones Goa, using his reversed initials, allowed them to experiment with manufacturing and supplying directly to retailers. And it was here that the seeds of vertical integration were sown, as they sought to control more of the production process themselves. They organized local women into sewing cooperatives, bypassing traditional manufacturers and gaining more speed and flexibility. And in classic fashion, he peddled, and often peddled, his earliest transport was a bicycle. He peddled his wares around the region and built up the business over the next 10 years. Zara as a brand was born in 1975, when they opened their first store in A Coruña. The initial idea was to sell low-priced lookalikes of popular, higher-end fashion items. And the couple originally intended calling it Zorba, after the film Zorba the Greek, but a local bar already had that name. So a bit of juggling with letters gave them Zara. But that first store was a testing ground for his burgeoning ideas about speed and responsiveness. He deliberately located it in a prime commercial area, recognizing the importance of visibility and direct customer interaction. Now, the early business model of Zara, which would later become the template for fast fashion, was built on several, for their time, revolutionary pillars. Firstly, vertical integration. Unlike most retailers who outsourced manufacturing to distant locations with long lead times, Zara strategically kept a significant proportion of its production in-house or close by, primarily in Spain, Portugal, later North Africa and Turkey. Now, this allowed for unprecedented control over that supply chain, from design and sourcing of raw materials to manufacturing, distribution, and retail. They also emphasized rapid design turnover. Instead of that traditional model of 2 collections a year, Zara's design teams constantly monitored fashion trends, drawing inspiration from runways, catwalks, street style, even direct customer feedback in stores. New designs could be sketched, prototyped, manufactured, and shipped to stores in a matter of weeks, a process that took months for competitors to complete. They also worked hard at responsive production. Zara's factories were designed for flexibility and small batch operation. That meant they could quickly scale up or down production of a particular item based on real-time sales data, minimizing the risk of overproduction and allowing them to react swiftly to changing demand. They learned lessons from other up-and-coming clothing retailers like Benetton, who pioneered the use of point-of-sale terminals in their shops so they could quickly get accurate feedback about sales trends, order quantities, and so on. Efficient distribution. A highly sophisticated and centralized logistics system originally centered around something called the Cube in Artejo, Spain, ensured that new shipments arrived at stores globally twice a week. This created a sense of scarcity and novelty, which encouraged customers to visit stores frequently and purchase items they liked because they knew they might not be there on their next visit. They also emphasized limited advertising. In stark contrast to fashion industry norms, Zara spent very little on traditional advertising. Their prime store locations and constantly updated inventory served as their primary market tools, driving foot traffic and creating buzz. Now, this radical departure from established practices allowed Zara to offer fashionable clothing at affordable prices. Quickly, they captured market share in Spain. And the success of those initial stores paved the way for expansion within Spain throughout the 70s and early 1980s. The international scaling of Zara began in 1988 with the opening of a store in Porto, in Portugal, which was followed by expansion to New York, 1989, and Paris, 1990. The international strategy was sometimes described as an oil stain approach, starting with flagship stores in major cities and then expanding into surrounding areas once the brand had an established foothold and when they'd gained an understanding of the local market. This methodical yet rapid expansion, coupled with their unique, vertically integrated fast fashion model, allowed Zara to become a global retail giant in its own right, and to offer a model used to support other brands. Pulled together under the umbrella of the Inditex Group, which was formally established in 1985, the business currently operates through 8 key brand groups: Zara, Pull&Bear, Massimo Dutti, Bershka, Stradivarius, Oysho, Zara Home, and the integrated Uterque. Each of these targeted at particular segments or product types. For example, Pull&Bear targets young people. Massimo Dutti offers more sophisticated and classic styles. Oysho focuses on lingerie, loungewear, and sportswear. Zara is the best known of these and has become a global brand with a strong design and fashion identity running through both the clothes and the stores in which they're sold. Things have moved on somewhat since their first startup back in A Coruña. Industria de Diseño Textil, Inditex, is now worth around $171 billion. And sales for last year, 2024, reached around $42 billion. That's a significant increase and substantially more than double the sales of a decade prior. The company employs over 160,000 people globally. And whilst they've optimized the number of physical stores, they still have 5,500 in 2024. Inditex is now present in 214 markets through both its physical stores and its online platforms. And it's planned to continue this expansion in the next years. But this success hasn't been an accident. It's the result of 50 years of continuous innovation. Zara and its sister brands have become leaders by exploiting some of the key non-price trends in their industry. For example, variety and product innovation. While exact figures fluctuate, Zara is known for introducing a high volume of new styles each year, often as many as tens of thousands of distinct clothing items. Now, that's certainly not a case of one size fits all, or of long-lasting product types. Inditex has integrated many aspects of a system for creating clothes and built a business around rapid response, originally leveraging manufacturing expertise in an area of Spain which didn't previously have a strong fashion tradition, but which did possess skilled textile workers. Now, from an early stage in the development of the manufacturing business, Inditex moved to control parts of the textile finishing operations, ensuring that the colors and the quality of the material used to make the clothes were up to standard. This not only gave them better quality control, but it also opened up the road to offering different, exciting fabric designs and textures. Now, Inditex today maintains a significant, although proportionately smaller than in the past, but a particular portion of its manufacturing base, still around 50 or 60%, close to its headquarters in Spain, Portugal, Turkey, and North Africa. And that allows them to have faster turnaround of fashionable items compared to relying solely on far distant production centers. A major part of that company's success also comes from its commitment to design. They employ a large team, hundreds of designers who play a central role. And that doesn't stop with the clothes themselves. It also extends to the presentation of them in their stores, the window displays, the online presence, marketing materials, and so on. For instance, their headquarters building in Artejo, near A Coruña in Spain, houses design studios, prototype workshops, and logistics facilities. That fosters close collaboration between them. Another key aspect of their success is the flexibility which comes from having a highly responsive manufacturing model. While some items are still basically sourced globally, a significant proportion of production happens close to the headquarters. Now, that allows them quick adjustments based on feedback. Rather than employing thousands directly in large factories, Zara historically has leveraged a network of smaller workshops in Spain and northern Portugal. Now, while the exact number of employees directly in manufacturing operations might have shifted, this regional network, supplied with pre-cut pieces and detailed instructions from central facilities, remains a key element which enables a high degree of flexibility and speed in assembling garments. Their output flows back into Inditex's massive, highly automated distribution centers, again, primarily located in Spain. Needless to say, all of this places significant demands on having a highly flexible and innovative coordinating system, one which Inditex has once again developed in-house. It's one that leverages advanced technologies to help give them that huge flexibility in both volumes and variety in the things they make. Now, this fast fashion model, which Zara pioneered, builds on a number of key pillars. It's about rapid trend spotting and design, so that designers in Antejo are constantly picking up signals from a variety of sources, from fashion shows, social media, street style, but particularly direct feedback from stores. The staff in those stores use modern technology, tablets and other systems to monitor what's going on, what's leaving their racks, what's happening at the point of sale systems, so they can provide real-time data on what's selling, what customers are asking for, and local preferences. So it's an intelligence system which feeds directly back to the design teams. So if a particular style of dress in a particular color starts selling rather well in Paris or in the Tokyo stores simultaneously, that real-time data is immediately visible to the design and commercial teams back in Spain. So that demand information allows them to decide quickly whether to increase production of that item, or perhaps adapt the design slightly for a new drop, or apply similar design elements in other garment types. So it's a dynamic, data-driven design process. That's far from the traditional seasonal planning. To support it, agile production and proximity sourcing. Based on that sales data and trend spotting, new designs are rapidly developed and prototyped. A significant proportion of production for the most fashionable items occurs locally, nearby. Fabrics often sourced and cut centrally, but then distributed to the network of workshops for sewing into prototypes. So, an emerging trend seen on a Monday could inspire a design sketched out by Tuesday. Fabric can be sourced and cut by Wednesday. Those cut pieces are then sent to nearby workshops for rapid assembly over the next couple of days. By the following Monday or Tuesday, finished garments are back at the central distribution center, ready to be sorted and shipped. Now, this drastically cuts the time from idea to finished product compared to more traditional models. Of course, underpinning that, the need for efficient logistics and distribution. Their highly automated centers sort and prepare shipments for individual stores worldwide based on those real-time orders and inventory needs. Items are shipped out very fast, often using air freight for international destinations. We're talking of low volumes, remember, and that helps again maintain speed. So a new shipment of best-selling jackets might arrive at the Artejo distribution center on a Tuesday. The automated system sorts specific quantities for particular stores based on their demand and inventory levels, and by Wednesday morning, those jackets are being loaded into trucks, headed to airports, or directly to stores in nearby countries. Stores in Europe can receive new stock within 24 to 48 hours. Further afield, we might be talking 48 to 72 hours. That's the kind of system which enables the frequent twice-weekly deliveries for which Zara is famous. They also built on small batch production and scarcity. They produce items in fairly small quantities, which simultaneously minimizes the risk of having unsold inventory if a trade fades out, but it also creates a sense of urgency, of scarcity, so customers are encouraged to buy items they like quickly because they know it might not be available next week. So, a unique limited run blouse might only have a production run of a few thousand units distributed across relevant stores globally. And if it sells out in a particular store within a few days, it's often not replenished, at least not with the exact same item. Instead, new designs arrive, keeping the inventory fresh, exciting, and driving repeat customer visits, people who turn up to see, what's new this week? Selling out's a sign of successful demand forecasting and a limited production strategy, not a supply chain failure. So where competitors historically planned and produced their new lines many months, 3 or 5 or even longer, before those goods finally made it to the stores, Zara has consistently demonstrated the ability to manage the whole process from idea to store in less than 2 weeks. And that speed and responsiveness, underpinned by integrated design, proximate manufacturing, advanced logistics, and real-time data, remains a core competitive advantage. Now that all sounds perhaps too good to be true, but remember, Zara has got there and continues to stay ahead through continuous innovation. But apart from innovating along those trajectories they've established, they need to respond to new challenges. For example, competition from ultra-low-cost rivals. That fast fashion model which Zara pioneered has been taken to extremes by a new generation of online players, people like Shein and Temu from China. And those companies leverage even faster production cycles, often directly from manufacturers in China. They're employing sophisticated data analytics, identifying micro trends, and using aggressive social media marketing. Shein talks about a 10-day design to delivery cycle at even lower price points than Zara. And that puts a significant pressure on Zara's market share, particularly among younger, price-sensitive consumers. Their supply chains are often less transparent than Zara's, raising some questions about labor practices and environmental impact. And indeed, this whole sustainability backlash is becoming a very significant challenge. All that rapid production and consumption cycle associated with fast fashion is coming under increasing scrutiny for its significant environmental and social costs. The industry is a major contributor to water pollution, carbon emissions, and the dark side of fast fashion is that people are increasingly discarded, throwing away items after a very short period of wearing them. There's also evidence of poor working conditions in factories around the world, including disturbing accounts of child labor exploitation. Now, while Zara and many other companies are aware of the importance of distancing themselves from this kind of practices, there's still a growing risk around negative consumer perceptions and the need to be seen as proactive in assuring sustainable sourcing and production practices. At the limit, that whole offer of fast fashion is being challenged by socially conscious customers who increasingly recognize the trade-offs and are now starting to advocate alternatives like renting clothes, opening up second-hand markets, reusing clothes, and indeed a move towards slow but sustainable fashion. Now, Zara's actively trying to address this sustainability backlash. Inditex has launched sustainability initiatives, setting out clear goals for the use of more sustainable materials, improving their supply chain traceability to find out what goes on in their factories, and implementing garment collection programs for recycling and maybe reuse. They're also exploiting new technologies to reduce environmental impact. But fundamentally shifting a business model built on speed and volume to one that's truly sustainable is a massive undertaking, and it's going to be a key challenge for Zara's continued success and its reputation in the coming decades. That pressure from both ultra-low-cost competitors and environmentally conscious consumers has created a complex kind of tightrope on which Zara's now got to walk. And to add to that, we have uncertainty in global trading conditions, not least since Donald Trump's arrival in the White House in 2025. The whole world trade system has been reeling from a series of shocks linked to tariffs and reconfiguration of supply chains. There's still enormous uncertainty, and companies around the globe are frantically exploring alternative options, particularly trying to innovate their way out of this crisis. Now, once again, Inditex is under significant threat since it is such a geographically distributed business, at least in terms of markets. But it also has some strengths, particularly regarding its nearshoring model, its proximate manufacturing idea, which has always underpinned much of its manufacturing philosophy. Now, despite these challenges, Zara still has much to celebrate at its 50th birthday party. It's played a key role in democratizing fashion, making trendy clothing accessible to a global audience and forcing the entire apparel industry to accelerate its supply chains and become more responsive to consumer demand. Amancio Ortega's vision and the implementation of that fast fashion model fundamentally altered how clothes are designed, manufactured, distributed, and consumed. 10 years ago, an analyst writing in the Wall Street Journal suggested that we think of Zara not as a brand, but a very speedy chameleon that adapts instantly to fashion trends. Now that's as true today as it was then. And the Zara story reminds us that adaptation is key in a world with so many simultaneous sources of dramatic change. For the future, it's going to lie in maintaining this adaptive capability, learning to play a new game built on its legacy of responsiveness, but coupled with innovations driving sustainability. Happy birthday, Zara.